Hello, friends. Welcome to another ramble. Today we are rambling with intention, but it is still a ramble nonetheless. And who are we? We are your hosts. I am Rebecca, and I'm here with
Stuart.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. We have not been on here for a good amount of time.
2 weeks?
Not like forever ago, but it's been several weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot has happened since then.
Mm-hmm. We've been busy.
Yes. But wait, you said we were rambling with intention. What are we talking about first? Just to give them a sneak peek.
Today we're going to be talking about RV maintenance, and I think there's a couple reasons to talk about it. The first is because in our last episode that we posted, we talked about how to go about buying an RV, some tips and tricks that we would tell someone who is seriously considering purchasing their first RV. And for another, it's springtime, and well, it's almost springtime. I guess it depends on where in the world you are. In Texas, the weather is really starting to get beautiful, and it feels like spring is just like right around the corner. I know we'll still have some cold days, but it's coming, guys. I know it's coming. And springtime is the perfect time to start dusting things off, making sure everything's good to go for the summer. So it feels like the perfect time to talk about RV maintenance, and that's what we're going to do in this episode.
It's going to be very, very applicable to us.
Yeah, we are doing our own RV maintenance coming up, getting ready for all of the stuff that's coming in the coming months. It's so cool because do you remember when we recorded our episode at the end of 2021? I was saying like, oh, 2022, it's going to be so cool. Like, I feel like it's going to be nothing like what we were expecting, but it's going to be like everything and so much more. It's happening. Mm-hmm. It's happening, and I'm so excited.
We'll save that,
but we'll talk about it at some other point.
Yeah, we'll save that for another time. Yeah, but our hiatus has been well used. Well used.
Yeah, we weren't just sitting on our bums.
Yeah, the biggest thing that happened is that I'm so proud of her and happy, but Rebecca was able to have basically like a nose reconstructive surgery.
Yeah.
After the dog attack and the first surgery that followed, her breathing never fully recovered.
No.
Like there was a deviated septum. I mean, the doctor said it was like breathing out of a little hole out of a pen cap.
Mm-hmm.
Just you could never breathe very well. And all things considered, in the emergent circumstance that was a very successful surgery the first time.
Yeah.
You were able to get lots of things taken care of, and she's just grinning from ear to ear right now. And I'm so happy that you had that. You're able to have good symmetry. You're able to have like just walked out of the hospital saying, I can breathe, which is great. The only caveat is that now I have to be careful because she can smell everything that I do.
Yeah, you got a little week break there when everything was like packed in to heal. But yeah, it was a long time coming. I initially looked into the surgery in the beginning of 2021, and some things came up and it wasn't a good time, so I postponed it. And then towards the end of last year, with the way everything is going, there's just so much uncertainty in the medical community right now, especially for just like medical autonomy. And I wanted to go ahead and get it done because I was worried that if I waited too much longer, I wouldn't have the freedom to make certain decisions. And I didn't want to miss out on the chance to improve my overall quality of life. I'm really, really fortunate that I have health care that is through the VA. It's 100% free to me by virtue of the fact that I'm a veteran, and because of the fact that the Navy service connected what happened to me, even though it didn't happen at work, they were willing to basically go in and repair some things.
Yes. So on January 24th, you had a reconstructive plastic surgery.
Mm-hmm.
The VA does not employ a plastic surgeon, but there's a plastic surgeon that donates his time, his Mondays, to the VA, and he's able to come in, and we've gone back to him several weeks in a row for follow-ups.
Yeah.
But it's just a wonderful opportunity you've been afforded. And
so many blessings out of such a traumatic experience. And I know that that isn't necessarily something that we've talked about on this podcast, but if you go and look on my YouTube channel, I have a video about it. And I have been documenting this entire experience since it began back in like November of last year, up to present, and then whenever it reaches like
Precipice.
like a decent conclusion, yeah, I will wrap everything up and then like present it as like a documentary. So, but yeah,
What's your handle for your YouTube?
it is Rebecca Gypsy Soul, and it's not the same spelling as my like Instagram handle. It's just the regular Gypsy and then SOL at the end of it. Um, yeah, if you search me up, you can find that video, and you can watch it if you want to. But it's, life happens. There's nothing you can do about that. You just have to decide how you're going to move forward through the things that you don't have any control over, and that reaction is what you can control. And I've chosen to react to the things that have happened to me in a very specific way. And having this surgery was a very conscious decision on my part, and it was a little bit scary. There was a lot going through my head beforehand, which is why we didn't mention it on the podcast, because I just couldn't think of a way to bring it up, Like I couldn't think of a way to talk about it. I had so many nerves. I was really scared, just because of everything. But it's been such a positive experience, and that surgeon is such a godsend. I mean, he's literally volunteering his time and his expertise, to people who need it, and that's beautiful. And you already know, if you've listened to any of our other episodes, we are huge advocates for volunteering, in any space, and this is just one more example of that. So yeah, my breathing is so great. My nose, I still have a little bit of swelling, but it's healing so well. Everything's just going back to normal so quickly. I had like a week of downtime, and then I just snapped back into gear. Like it was just a switch flipped, and I was ready to go again.
Yeah, it did not take you long to hop back up and be like, I need to vacuum the floors. I need to do the dishes. It's like, sit your butt down, relax, heal. But we are almost, Monday will be 3 weeks. And gosh, it's incredible. The changes that I see. I mean, how you are physically and mentally from it. You're
Yeah.
so much better than you were never bad, but you're so much better than you were right before it happened because you were so worried. Yeah.
I was just nervous
Yeah.
for a lot of different reasons, but yeah, it's been a really positive experience, and I'm very, very grateful. So that is why we were MIA.
That's a little insight on our life.
Yeah, that's why we weren't posting anything. That's the beauty of podcasting, and of not, I guess, not being like a huge platform, is when we need to take breaks, we can, and we don't really owe anyone an explanation for it. But we hope that you all are with us still and ready to dive into this week's episode, because I think what we're talking about is applicable to a lot of you, and hopefully you can derive some value from it.
Yeah. So RV maintenance is very near and dear to us because
Yeah.
we are very near, as in our RV, and dear to us because we do it all the time. Whether it is what I did this week, which was, what did I do? I replaced the little handle for the screen door, and
Really upgraded it.
Yeah. What else did I do?
I think you adjusted something else on the door.
Yeah, I adjusted how the door closes, to make it more squeeze more and seal the door more. Always doing something with the RV. You're always thinking it's an improvement, but really it's just maintaining, and finding the next best part to put in it.
Yeah, I mean, RVs are very customizable in a lot of ways, but they're prone to their own unique sets of issues. But so many of those issues, you can save yourself a lot of heartache if you're just proactive.
Yeah.
And I think the motto for this episode is just be suspicious. You know, that real
Don't be suspicious.
Don't be suspicious. No, in an RV, you need to be suspicious. You need to be looking around, paying attention to how the RV is handling the elements. When it rains, or it's been wet, I regularly will like
Like
wake
peeking.
up at like 11 o'clock at night and see Stuart like looking in the cupboards and the cabinets and stuff to make sure that hard to reach places that we don't normally see aren't leaking.
Hmm.
When we had this cold snap, we had an issue with a lot of condensation because there was such a huge temperature difference between the inside of the RV and the like outside air, and so we were like opening up everything to make sure that the cupboards and everything could
Dehumidify.
dehumidify. Yeah, because we had condensation on like everything. Paying attention to that kind of stuff because in the moment it might not seem like a big deal, but over time everything accumulates,
Hmm.
and it's a huge problem. And you don't want to, ruin your overall experience because you weren't paying attention.
Yeah. And so in in a dwelling, like a house, um, every joint that you have on a house is overlapped with trim, with like a permanent sealant, with shingles, things that just have to sit there and stay there.
Mm-hmm.
And in an RV, it has to be very similar, but also with an asterisk to it in that it needs to be flexible. So I, I'm never going to go in our RV while we're going down the highway, but I imagine everything is just shaking and torquing everywhere,
Mm-hmm.
twisting this, that,
Mm-hmm.
and the other. And everything that is on an RV has to be somewhat flexible. And so you can't have those super permanent sealants. You can't have shingles on an RV unless it was like a deer lease trailer that you're never going to move. Deer lease trailer is just the term for a trailer that's too ragged to take on the road. Um, but things have to be way more flexible. And when they're
And
flexible,
lighter.
yeah, flexible and lighter, um, that also takes out the durability. So, with that being said, we wanted to kind of start at the top and work our way down. But across the board, we want to say this is that the details are what's going to kill you if you don't pay attention to them.
Absolutely.
Pay attention to the details.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think people's biggest mistake with RVs is they tend to treat them like houses. And you can't treat an RV like a house because, as stupidly obvious as it sounds to say it out loud, RVs are not houses. And they just handle things differently. So, to start with, we'll start at the very top. We'll start on the roof. In our last episode, we talked about how important it is to pay attention to the roof because that's where things can really start to fall apart quickly. The roof on our RV it has studs and what, like plywood,
OSB.
OSB, and then
No, it's plywood.
the canvas
Yes.
stretched over top of that. And then the canvas, the edges, and everything around, like the AC vent and all that stuff, is sealed with silicone. Or,
No, it's caulk.
yeah,
Silicone's usually clear.
that's true.
Yeah,
Windows are sealed with silicone.
they are, but you can use caulk
I
too.
definitely know what I'm talking about. Anyway, moving
A
forward past
caulking
that.
silicone is a type of caulk.
Well,
Just say caulk.
caulk. Okay. Um,
CAULK.
caulk. Anyway, moving forward from that, the roof is where things are going to start to fall apart really, really quickly, and so it's really important to be going up there semi frequently and taking care of business. And what we mean by that is
Going up there and looking around, seeing if anything looks like if you see something on your roof and you're like, I need to do this. Um, don't wait 6 months and then do it. Do it that week, that day. It's not like things are like an emergency,
mm-hmm.
but if you're if water penetrates your roof, gets on that decking, or is along the side somewhere, along the corner somewhere, it's water does what everything else does with gravity, and it goes downward. And so if things get on your roof, they're going to get down your walls, they're going to get down your studs, and you're going to have a really bad time. So
Mm-hmm.
the caulking that's around like your fridge vent, your AC, around your other vents in certain areas, your windows. The caulking on that needs to be inspected, semi-frequently and replaced on an annual, I would say, basis if it's out in the open, and maybe not annually, but every 2 to 3 years if it
Mm-hmm.
stays covered.
Mhm.
all the time. Um, that's really the biggest thing, is going and intentionally trying to find something wrong with it.
Mhm.
And when you find something wrong with it, fix it.
Mhm. And you might be wondering to yourself, like, okay, something wrong, like, what does that mean? We're not talking about like gaping holes in your roof. It's just things age and weather because they're exposed to the elements.
They crack, or they look like
Exactly.
the sealant starts crack, the caulking starts cracking. It looks like it's dried out. When
Mhm.
it's dried out, that means that it's not filling all the voids, and
Mhm.
that water will seep through. You might not get a pour, like going through into the inside of your RV, but things that seep then soak, things that soak then drip, and it goes everywhere.
Yeah, it's just a matter of time till you're left with a situation. So that's what we mean by like addressing problems. You can just go up there and you can tell when things look old and worn out. And we talked about that in our previous episode about like buying used RVs and things to look for on the roof. Like if it looks black and worn out, that's because it is and it needs to be repaired. And it's not a really hard task. We've done it a couple of times whenever we have just done our regular maintenance. You just go up there and work on tearing it off. There's no easy, clean way to rip up that old caulking. You just have to do it.
Yeah.
And it is what it is. You're going to
Mhm.
get dirty. Wear clothes you don't really care about too much, and just enjoy being outside. Pick a good day.
Yeah, pick a good day. We've picked some not good days, and
Well,
we
we
have
had,
to,
had didn't have a choice.
and a lot of times we didn't have a choice. But the two kinds, two blah, 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 blah. The two types kinds. That's what I combine types and kinds. The two types.
The two kipes.
Yeah, the two types of caulking that we keep on hand are both made by Dicor. It's spelled Dicor.
It's
They've got
kind
a
of the industry standard
Yeah, they've got a plethora of products to empty your wallet.
of
But
varying
yeah,
degrees of quality.
yeah, but they've got tubes just that go in like a regular squeeze, like pistol type caulking gun. And we always keep two on hand. And one of them is called self-leveling, and the other is called non-sag.
And they're very different, and it's really important to know the
Yes.
difference because we've seen people confuse and try to like use them interchangeably, and they don't really work that way.
No, and you also want to get it to match whatever color you have, because we've accidentally bought gray before,
Yeah.
and we don't have a gray roof, so
Yeah.
it would look really wrong. But the non-sag is what you use on your roof. That's something that flattens out and really tries to cover a specific area. It's not really
No, you mean
exactly,
self-leveling.
what did I
You
say?
said non-sag.
Oh boy. Oh boy, we might have to cut that. We're
So,
going to confuse people.
okay, so two types. They're by the company Dicor. One is non-sag, one is self-leveling. It's very, just think of gravity. It's very common sense, really. You want self-leveling on the roof because when you put it down over the areas that you need to cover,
Flattens out.
yeah, it just kind of flattens out. It fills in everything. It like loses the bumpy look. It honestly, it looks great and it works really, really well on flat
It's
surfaces.
the one that makes you look good about doing it, and like
Yeah,
you
like
know what
you
you're
like
doing.
a professional, right?
Yeah.
Um, non-sag is what you do on like the edges of your slides or seams or
Doors,
windows,
corners.
everything else.
Yep.
And they don't work interchangeably because if you try to use self-leveling on a vertical surface, you're gonna have a run.
It's just gonna look like just a big old long snail trail all the way to the ground.
And I guess technically you could use non-sag, couldn't you, on a roof?
Yeah, you can, but it's just not gonna be as pretty, and it doesn't fill the voids and
Yeah,
like cover the hips and the ridges of
yeah.
all the joints as well.
So that's the main thing. If you have a roof with canvas, obviously some RVs have fiberglass, so you're
And
not
by
gonna.
by canvas, you mean rubber and TPDM. I'm
Yes,
just gonna leave it. It's basically just you have your wood decking, and then you have
that
a
white.
membrane over it.
Yeah, that membrane. If you have that, then, at the very least, you need to be going up and refreshing the caulking and making sure everything's good to go. It's also a really good idea to go up there and like wash your roof every so often because
Mm-hmm.
dirt and leaves and twigs will, as they decompose, start to eat through all of that stuff, and that's no good either. We took things another extra step because we have an older RV and we used a silicone-based rubber basically like you put on with a roller called Henry's Tropicool. We did that last spring and it was a 2-day job start to finish of like going up, taking all the old caulking off, washing everything, prepping everything, and then putting the Tropicool down and then
Taping.
taping. Yeah, it was a whole process, but it was worth it because it's held together really, really well, and it basically just puts a sheet
A
or
whole
like a
new
coating of
level.
like rubber across your membrane and helps protect everything just a little bit more.
Yeah.
And I think that stuff's warranted for like 25 years or something.
Yeah, that's what it's made for.
It's not cheap,
No, we
obviously,
spent 300 or 400 bucks.
but in my opinion, if you have an older RV, it's super worth it, and it really wasn't hard. The two of us did. It's
Yeah.
messy, which is why the prep is really important and like taping the edges so you don't have runs and stuff. But it was worth it. And every time I've gone up there and looked at our roof, I'm really, really pleased with how it's held together. And also, that kind of like helps protect all of your seals and everything. It's just a really good thing to
Yeah.
do.
And also your roof is going to be less white as it ages
Mhm.
just because the sun fading.
Mhm.
And what's super awesome about this stuff is that it's a very bright white. So your roof ends up being cooler, so you get less heat in your RV. And it is very hard to regulate the temperature in an RV
Anyway,
anyway. So anything you can do to help with that is super awesome.
yeah.
So Henry's Tropical is not exactly a necessary thing, but over time, with an older age one, you're going to want to do things to prolong it
Mhm.
and prolong having to replace the roof completely, roof
Mhm.
membrane completely.
And the good news is they sell it at Home Depot, so
Yeah,
shout out the Home Depot.
it's the only thing that is actually recommended for RVs that you can buy on the shelf that you don't have to buy online.
Mhm.
And that also made it the most affordable.
Mhm.
So that was a super awesome thing we did.
Yeah,
Yeah.
highly recommend it. So after you knock out the roof, you're good to go there. You're sure that all of your seals and everything are going to make it through another year. You just kind of work your way down the rest of the RV. A lot of the common failure points on an RV are like the corners, particularly if you have a slide. And I know just from traveling over the last year or so, whenever we are on the road, you're like checking things constantly just because,
Yeah.
again, like the RV is shifting and flexing and stuff. So you're always paying attention to those corners. Whenever we finally settle down for a little while and we aren't moving around as much, we're paying attention to everything because it's like the RV has to resettle every single time we stop moving. And those areas are common failure points. And I don't really know if there's a whole lot like you can obviously replace like corner moldings and that kind of thing on the outside of the RV. I guess if you really wanted to, you could pull that stuff off and like refortify. We are actually going to do that because we've just had a couple points on the RV that need a little TLC. We're going to take off the corner trim on the outside, put on like a wood hardener on the framing
Yeah.
underneath the aluminum siding, and then basically like button everything back up because the lumber that they use just isn't the best quality.
And
And
over
over
time, you
time,
can see it shifting a
yep,
whole bunch,
yep.
and there's no way that that's going to stay like that forever in that good a shape.
And like it's really easy for screws, the like the holes that they're drilled into to get stripped,
Yeah,
and things just
when
separate.
if a screw that you here's a really good point. Um, if you take a screw out of somewhere to then like put caulk in, and then if you ever take a screw out of somewhere in your RV and it is rusty, don't ignore that. That means
Mhm.
that there is water somewhere in there
Mhm.
and it's rusting your screws. And then if your screws don't hold, then the molding becomes loose, so the problem's even worse. But if you find a rusty area, a rusty screw, look right there, look above that
Be
area,
suspicious.
be suspicious. Absolutely, that's a big thing,
Mhm.
because then your screws won't bite, things won't stay tight.
Mhm.
Yeah, good
Yeah,
point.
that's a really good point. And that kind of brings me back to like the corners and everything on our slide. We have gone in and like cleaned off the non-sag on the edges of the slide where it covers like the joints where things are like joined together, and then cleaned all that off and then redone that non-sag just because that's another area where it is going to degrade. But on the majority of our RV, there aren't a ton of places besides the roof where there's exposed silicone or caulking except for the slide and obviously windows and doors. So, those are just common areas that you have to pay attention to. And you might be thinking like, wow, this is just so much. Like, I just don't know. This sounds like I would need a professional. You can hire like an RV mechanic or whatever to do this kind of thing, but I'm can promise you, as somebody who had no experience with any of this stuff prior to living in an RV, although there's a learning curve, it's really not hard.
Everything's on YouTube.
That's a huge thing. And RVs are all pretty much the same. So if you figure out how to fix one thing, there's going to be like no variation across the board.
Mhm.
And it really isn't that bad. It's very easy to be a do-it-yourselfer and maintain whatever it is that you have for longevity. And hopefully, I mean, I feel like every time we fix something, it kind of builds my confidence a little bit more. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, we got through this disaster or this issue, we can definitely
Mhm.
deal with the next thing.
But still, at the same time, treat your RV like glass because it is.
Yeah, yeah, especially if you have an older one, just because it can be really, really difficult to find the like original parts to replace things if something
Hmm.
goes wrong. Because RV dealers and manufacturers, they stop making those parts after so many years because the turnover rate with RVs is just so quick.
They just want you to buy a new one and forget
Mm-hmm.
about it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
But
So there's that. We've covered the roof. We've covered
the
the
sides,
corners and the doors and the windows. We haven't resealed our windows yet, but that's something that we need to think about doing at some point here in the not too distant future,
yep,
because it is going to need it. Um, Last but not least, this was honestly something that we did pretty quickly. I think this was honestly the first thing that we did after we bought the RV. It was the first
yeah,
upgrade.
it needed tires.
It needed new tires because the tires that were on it were old, and it needed upgraded tires because the tires that were on it were a little bit too light for the weight of the RV. And you
Diameter,
can speak to that better than I can,
yeah.
yeah.
So we replaced the tires on the way home after we picked up our RV. And tires have a couple different ratings. There's a weight rating and a speed rating on tires. Clearly, we're not going to be going out there and winning any races pulling the RV. But weight wise, tires have a specific weight that each one of them will carry.
Hmm.
And so we have a dual axle trailer. So there's two axles, four tires. Say this kind of goes in with knowing how much your RV weighs. How we
Hmm.
said in the last one, taking it to like a cat scale and figuring how much it weighs. You need to figure out, at least get a very, you know, approximate ballpark of how much weight is going to be on the axles of your RV,
Hmm.
and then go look on your tires and you'll see a weight rating on them at whatever PSI. Okay, you add the four tires up if it's two axles, or six tires up if it's three axles, or one axle and two tires.
Hmm.
Add the tires up and you come to a collective number of whatever weight.
Hmm.
You need tires that are made for at least that weight, and it doesn't hurt if they're made for more weight.
No.
So we upgraded and we have, I want to say we don't have 10 ply tires, but we have
No.
8 ply.
8.
And they are, I think they will hold 8,000 pounds on the RV axles. And then we have the tongue,
Hmm.
which, so they hold 8,000 pounds. That's what our RV weighs. But the fact that there's weight on the tongue too. You need to get good tires under the thing, because all the ones that they give you from the dealership, can't tell you how many times I've seen them on Facebook. People have blowouts and then things just
Yeah.
rip apart the whole side of their RV, because those tires that, I think pretty much 95% of the tires these days are made in China.
Hmm.
But the ones they put on there, that's to just like get you out of the lot and then get you to a state park,
They're the budget friendly
and
version.
that's it.
Yeah. And there's certain things you just don't want to cut corners
Yeah,
on, and tires are definitely one of them.
yeah.
We got really, really lucky last summer when we had our axle and hub separate that the tire itself didn't explode. It just basically bounced away. And the damage that we sustained on that side was very, very minor. We are repairing it, and you'll
Hmm.
never even know that it happened at all. But in the
As you,
majority of cases,
hmm
that's not true because when that rubber tire just comes apart and the bands go everywhere, I mean,
hmm
I've
as you
seen
say
terrible
that,
things.
that's a good point. RV maintenance, your axles.
Oh
It's
yeah.
something super easy to do. If you have a grease gun, there's a little rubber cap that you pull off, and there's a little zerk fitting, like a little nipple. Put your grease gun on it, squirt some grease into there. Don't just like go hog wild and just squeeze a whole tube into it, but making sure your axles have grease, because that's why our hub separated. That
And
was
that
a
was on the people who repaired our axle for us in the first place. They didn't do their due diligence and
and
make sure.
I didn't go back and check mine because they were a trailer place and I thought they'd do that.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Anyways.
but the last thing with getting yourself rolling and something to do while you're rolling down the road, to have good for rolling down the road, is you can be bougie and you can have a temperature gun, which I have for other reasons, but basically like a little temperature gun, and shine it and get the temperature of each one of your tires while you're getting gas. After you've been on the road, after your tires have some heat in them. If any one of those tires is exceptionally hotter than the others, um, you've got a big problem. You've got like a band that's going to break. You've got a tire that's going to bubble, one that's going to blow out. And if you don't have one of those temperature guns, you can be as simple as just put your hand directly on the tread and on the sidewall and feel each tire. There's no baseline for it, but if one feels abnormally hot, you might want to do some digging. And the
Be
last
suspicious.
thing, yeah, be suspicious. And the last thing with the tires is have a good spare. Have not the spare that you've had on there for the last 6 years, or that the RV came with and it's a 2006 model. Because the second you put that on there, it gets the weight put on it. You're going to be up even deeper of a creek, maybe a couple hours from there potentially. That's not something you want to have happen. Most people that have an RV are only going for weekends, only going for camping trips, and that's not what you want to be dealing with on a Friday night when like the kids are hungry, whenever you're trying to go get takeout pizza, when your check-in time is at such and such place. Like, just there's such there's a long list that we just made here in the last however many minutes, but all these little things can really add up and detract from the value and make you hate having an RV. And I would hate for somebody to hate having an RV
Because of something preventable.
because of something preventable.
Yeah, it can seem like a lot, but the thing of it is, once you have an RV, and in a way, it's kind of like having a puppy, or obviously, I would never equate a piece of equipment with a human life, but it's not so very different from like having a toddler. You just constantly have to be watching it and constantly be suspicious. And if something seems off, or if something gets too quiet, or if something is all of a sudden making too much noise, question that and figure out why. And it's not a house, it's literally something designed to move around on the road, but it's also not made with like the best materials all the time. I mean, RV manufacturers cut a lot of corners, and they do certain things to save on weight and to save on money, and that's great and everything, but the consumer can end up paying the price for that later on down the line, especially if they don't know what to look out for. And so that's why we present all of this to you. There are other things that you can look out for too, other things that you can do to improve the longevity.
Like a dehumidifier,
That's
taking
huge.
care of condensation,
Venting.
venting, cleaning out the bottom sills of your windows, because there's actually a weep hole where water needs to drain out of. That's something small that can build up and cause rust, mildew. You don't want nasty things like this. If your RV's in storage, there's things like damp rid that'll keep it absorbing some type of water that's in there.
So many little things. And like we've always said, YouTube has all of the information that you could possibly need and more. Just make yourself a YouTube scholar and spend some time learning from some other people, because the beautiful thing about this, as much as it feels like there is to know and understand and do, somebody else has already done it, and you can save yourself a lot of headache just by learning from some other people and picking up some little tips and tricks. And don't feel like you have to go with like the most expensive option either, because there are lots of good ways to maintain things without breaking the bank.
Yeah.
So, and at some point, sorry, just last thing,
yeah.
at some point we should talk about like money saving hacks that we have. This is not the episode for it, but at some point I think we should, because there are some things we've done to save ourselves some headache and some money.
Yeah.
And
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
This has been, I feel like we started just rambling after we have a list here, guys, and this was supposed to be organized, but as we talk, things get thrown in. You're like, oh yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah,
So
just take the little nuggets that you can and
yeah,
go with it, and then try to have a good time
yeah,
because it's supposed to be fun.
yeah. Have a good time. Pay attention to the details, but don't be the guy all the time that is opening things up and like peeking for problems. Be that guy sometimes, or be that gal sometimes,
But know how to turn it off.
but know how to have a good time. I need to
Yeah.
talk to myself about that.
Yeah, I'm wondering, like,
Hmm.
you speaking from experience, maybe?
It's exhausting.
It can be. Yeah, it's exhausting to be you. I know. Well, that's basically the nutshell of RV maintenance. There is plenty more. There's lots you can do. There's less you can do. Yeah, just take what you can and roll. But we're gonna go ahead and wrap it up because we could talk about this for a long time, and I think we've beat a dead horse, maybe.
Let us know if you have questions.
Yeah, there you go. If you have questions, reach out. Our DMs are always open. But we're going to go ahead and move into our feel good story. And this is actually a little bit of a regionally local story that I had the pleasure of finding out about
I
like a couple of weeks ago. And you were the one that told me about it, and you were like so nonchalant about it. And
yeah.
I'm like sitting there, my mind is being blown, and I'm like, "Oh my
Your
gosh, this is
hair's
the
on
most
edge.
beautiful story." I have like
Yeah.
full body chills. And so I'm gonna be the one to tell this story because I think if you tell it, it's not
Yeah.
gonna be as like
Well,
special.
all right. Well, tell them how it came to be
Yeah,
talked about first. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay. Do what you gotta do.
yeah. I'm gonna
Have
do it.
fun.
Yeah.
I'll turn my mic off.
So we were coming back from a follow-up after my surgery, I think 2 weeks ago, and what road is that? 45?
That is I-45.
Yeah, I-45, going to Houston. Every single time we've gone, there's this furniture store that I see from the interstate, and it looks like it's got a lot going on. It's huge. It's got a big parking lot. It just looks very like busy. And I've noticed it every single time that we've driven by. I think it's got like a sculpture of some like chairs or something outside, like in the entryway or something. So it's very it grabs your attention. And I'd seen it and I didn't really think anything of it. And then as we were driving home, you said, "Hey, have you ever been into that furniture store?"
I know
Um,
you haven't. You're
and
not
yeah,
from
and I was
here.
like,
I don't know.
"No." I'm like, "Why is he?" He's like, and you were like, "Oh, it's really cool." And then you went on this tangent. You're like, "Actually, the guy who owns it is like this really cool guy who's done all this cool stuff for the city of Houston and for his community, and like he's this huge philanthropist, blah 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 blah." And I'm like, what are you talking about? And so you pull up some videos and you pull up an interview. This guy, so his name is Mattress Mac. And if you grew up in this regional part of Texas, like central slash
Southeast.
southeastern Texas, then you have heard of Mattress Mac because you've probably seen his commercials on TV. I'm not from Texas, so I missed out on that gift, but I'm getting caught up now. And I have a story here with the headline Mattress Mac opens Houston furniture stores to hundreds without power after storm. So this is from February 18th of 2021, right after we had Snowmageddon. For Texans, it was a really traumatic experience because Texans are not acclimated to the cold. The infrastructure here is not designed to be able to handle such extremely low temperatures, and we got a ton of snow, a ton of ice, and it stayed well below freezing for like a week. And people were hit really, really, really hard. If you don't know how bad that experience was, do a little bit of research on it, watch the videos. I'm not being like melodramatic when I say that it was bad. Um, and there's this gentleman in Houston who's known as Mattress Mac who did something incredible with his business that he didn't have to do. And I'm going to read this story because it gave me chills, and I'm having chills now. I'm not going to delay any longer.
Does it say what business it is first?
Um, yeah, I assume so.
Because you've said his name and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the story goes, after the deadly storm swept through Texas, Jim Mickenville's Houston furniture store was packed, but not with shoppers. Mickenville, who goes by Mattress Mac, is known for opening the doors of his furniture stores to those in need. So, when a snowstorm left Texans without power or heat in the frigid cold, Mattress Mac invited hundreds in. Least we could do is open this furniture store to let people come into a warmer place, Mattress Mac told CBS Houston affiliate KHOU TV. Sofas and plenty available TVs, plenty of available mattresses, plenty of available and lots of hot food. So far, he's opened his Richmond and Houston, Texas gallery furniture stores as shelters. For people like Denistra Hunt, it's a temporary home away from home. We spent the night pretty much in the cold, which is something I've never done, she told KHOU. With a 2-year-old, it was dreadful. We all just got in one bed and covered up. The stores have beds, blankets, and even food for families struggling after sweeping power outages devastated millions in the state. And it's not the first time Mattress Mac has helped people during natural disasters. In 2017, he transformed some of his gallery furniture stores into shelters after Hurricane Harvey, and he did the same in 2005 when many fled Louisiana after Hurricane Katrina. And his giving doesn't stop there. He often donates furniture to families in need and make over teachers' lounges at local schools. I'm part capitalist and part social worker, and this is what I like to do, he told CBS This Morning for It's a More Perfect Union series in 2017. Although it costs money to keep his 3 stores up and running as shelters, Mattress Mac willingly does it, crisis after crisis. We can afford that, and what we can't afford is to cause these people to lose hope. We got to give them hope, he said. This is what my parents would have done. For many Texans, Mattress Mac's furniture stores are often the calm after the storm. He told KHOU, tough times never last, tough Texans do, and we'll get through this also. I have full body chills. I'm gonna start crying.
Yeah.
This story, there are so many people who have so much and could do so much, and they don't do anything. And this little old man, his entire philosophy towards life, it came from his parents, who didn't have a lot of money. They grew up, they had food on their table, but they obviously didn't have everything under the sun. But his parents instilled in him the fact that if you have something, you need to be trying to help someone who doesn't have as much as you do. And he and his wife built these businesses, and rather than just hoarding the money that they're getting from a very lucrative business like selling furniture, they're choosing to take a part of that and give it back to the community. And that is beautiful to me. And it goes even further than this. Like, we watched a video. They have like daycare
School.
and K through 12 schools for kids who don't have a lot of opportunities in Houston. They can come, they can get a diploma, and then they can learn a trade. And after they graduate, if they want to, they can turn right around and start working in the furniture store. And they have a career already there waiting for them. There's a gym for the employees to use. They're guaranteed like 1 meal a day. And then whenever there are these natural disasters and shelters and everything else are overrun, he is there stepping up, opening up his furniture stores for people so that they aren't left out in the cold. It makes me feel so good that there is someone like that in the world making such a positive, impactful difference in people's lives. And intentionally. And the second I heard that story, the second we watched that video, his interview on Ellen, I knew that we had to talk about this on the podcast. This is just everything that we love, everything that we're about. He's such a cool person.
He donates a lot of money to a lot of regional things, a lot of national things, and he's pretty much a celebrity, only really because he was just a very exciting guy to watch a commercial.
Yeah,
And
that's kind of how he got his start.
Yeah, his thing was like he jumps and he says, "Gallery furniture will save you money." Yeah. And so that's just what he's been known for, and the fact that he just donates so much money to such good causes, and then he opens his doors when lots of people actually in those times it shows people's like values and how they are, like,
and the fact that we actually can make the world a better place. Like, we can make the world a better place. We have the power to do that.
Yeah, he does a lot. Yeah.
And this one person is doing so much, and it just really makes you step back and look at everybody. Look at these people in these positions of authority who are telling us that we need to do these certain things, and like, oh, just do this, just give us this money and we'll make everything better. We can make it better ourselves. We don't need somebody up on some podium making it better for us. We have that power, and Mattress Mac is a perfect example of that. And it just makes me feel so damn good to see somebody doing such positive things in a world where it can feel so impossible to have make any kind of tangible difference or help anyone who's hurting. I just love it so much, and I had to share that story, and I hope that it makes you feel as good as it makes me feel. Go and watch his interview with Ellen.
We're gonna link the interview.
Yeah.
We're gonna link a video that I found, and we'll link that or put a screenshot up of that article. But that is somebody who's literally done service above self, and that's
Yes.
something that we can really respect.
Yes.
And that's just the ultimate feel-good story for actually paying it forward for no other reason than it's the right thing to do. And just, it's beautiful.
Yeah. So I have nothing else to say. I don't think I can top that.
She's out of words. She's in love. She's like, I want to go give him a hug.
I really do. He's such a cute old man. Like, ugh. We're going to leave it here, guys. Don't forget that you can follow us on Instagram. We'll have behind the scenes stuff. I'll share some pictures of Mattress Mac, some resources from the RV maintenance side of things. So follow us there if you are already. That's a great way to connect with us, a great way to send us any questions that you have too. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, rate and review. You can actually rate on Spotify now, which is really cool. So please do that if you haven't already. And thank you for being here and listening to us ramble for one more time. We really appreciate it.
We started out a little rusty, and now we're like, hell yeah!
We're fired up with love.
Yeah.
We love you guys. Thank you so much. I'm Rebecca.
I'm Stuart.
This has been our ramble.